Well, hey, Becca and Steph, thank you guys so much for being part of the daily dose of the gospel. Just a word of encouragement to keep people grounded in Jesus. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good.
We're doing
I
good.
know.
Doing
As,
good?
as
Good.
well as expected
Yeah.
for a month into quarantine. I think we're holding up pretty well.
Yeah.
Into a
Awesome.
groove, I think.
hmm
Well, tell us a little bit, how have you been adjusting to all the changes? Obviously, we're all going through this together. It's a new normal, new schedule, new routines, but how are you guys adjusting to all of these changes because of the coronavirus?
You can go first.
I'll go first. Well, I feel like in this house it's kind of changing daily. Just kind of what is going on, what we're going to do to keep ourselves occupied. But I think it took a couple weeks to kind of get into a groove with school, and the whole distance learning is new for everybody. But I kind of feel like now we kind of know what we're doing. The kids know what to expect, and
Yeah.
I think we're all hanging in there.
Yeah. Week
Mhm.
4 definitely went much better than week 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So we're getting into a groove now.
Yeah.
It's interesting that both of our husbands are still working. So their schedules are still different. That their at least Andy's schedule has changed some, but he is still going into work a couple of days. So there's just been a lot of shifts, just a lot of change, and a lot of adjusting. So it has required a lot of patience on everyone's part, but I think we're getting the hang of it.
Yeah.
And
We're just trying to figure out what the new normal looks like now.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And it is a little bit different every day. So one day at a time, that's
Yeah.
kind of the name of the game.
Absolutely. No, thanks for sharing.
yeah, we'll feel it.
Feel at a time.
Yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, the other question I wanted to ask was just how has quarantine life been working out for you? What have you enjoyed the most, but what have you found most difficult as well?
Well, I, for one, have actually enjoyed having Andy around more. His schedule at the dealership, he's got a few 12-hour days, a few days a week normally. And they've really cut back. So the days that he does go in now, he's only working, 4 or 5 hours. So it's been nice to have him around for dinner pretty much every night the last few weeks. That's been nice. And evenings. So I've had like bedtime backup, which is like super helpful, and some help with dishes and things like that. So that's been good. I think the thing that's been hardest for at least our kids is just the loss of the social aspect. That's hard. I think we're starting to feel some of that loneliness. Like, even though we have a house full of people, we're all together, there's still some loneliness that you feel in the midst of all the togetherness, which is
Yeah.
ironic almost.
Right.
but
I would agree.
Very felt.
I think for us, when we first kind of found out, like, we're all going to have to be home together all day. Like, we have a lot of people in this house. And at first, I think you can probably agree that I was worried, like, is this
Terrified.
terrified? Thank you.
Is an
Are we going to be able to
reaction.
survive this quarantine?
Yeah.
But honestly, I think it has brought us more closer, and we have been spending more times as families, which has been great. We've had more meals together.
Yeah.
I would say when we had the old normal life, everyone had their own schedules, and it wasn't all of us home at one time. And so now I really do appreciate the time that we just have to hang out with each other.
Yeah. The kids will definitely, my kids are old enough that they will remember this. So I try to keep that in mind these days, even though it feels really weird. Some of my childhood memories are not my parents' favorite times. I know that. So I know that my kids will have very specific memories of this time when we were all trapped in the house together.
Absolutely. It sounds like a book in the making.
Yeah. I have some good ones. So I think that's what we're really trying to remember, that these can be good memories too, even though it's a hard time.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for us is not being able to go out. I mean, to the beach. You guys love the beach too, and we can't go to the beach and the playground. And sometimes with little ones, you just need a change of scenery. So I think that's when it just really feels like the walls are slowly, caving in.
Yeah.
But you just have be creative and think of other things to do. So it has caused us to be more creative as parents on kind of things, you know, we do to keep the kids occupied. So there is good in, you know, in those challenging times.
No, absolutely. No, thank you. That's great perspective. I mean, you guys, I know both have just been such a blessing to Sea Road Church and just the community, especially as it relates to worship and music and using your voices and gifts and talents just to bless others. But I mean, how has your faith and even worship music helped you to cope, you know, in the midst of all of these changes?
I think for me, we love music here in this house, and I think there's always music playing at some point. I mean, for me, music makes me come alive. And, you know, when I feel like I kind of am trapped with, you know, just, I don't know, maybe feeling down or, you know, just, I mean,
stuck.
Yeah,
Sometimes
stuck.
You just feel stuck in your head.
Music just breaks that pattern, and it helps you just focus on the Lord and focus on what really truly matters and where your priority should be.
I think, you know, there's a lot of times, and you even can see it on Facebook reading through, that there is a loneliness in the world right now because we've been stripped of all our busyness. So we can't use our busyness to like cover up our loneliness anymore.
Yeah.
And as believers, even though we may feel lonely, we are not alone. And even though the world is insecure, God is secure and we are secure in him. And I think just having those, even the hymns and, you know, the worship songs that we have available, they repeat those themes. And so just keeping that in the top of your mind is so important, because you can get stuck in that spiral of, this is hard, this is awful, it's going to be so bad, none of my pants are going to fit by the time this is over.
That's really the worst.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can, you know, just swirl around in your mind that can really create anxiety. But we have truth to counteract that. So yeah, we do. We try to sing together, even if it annoys the kids sometimes.
Yep.
No, that's great. No, awesome. Thank you both. That's just great perspective too. I mean, the last question that I have to ask was just, has there been a particular Bible verse or a particular worship song that's been helpful for you guys during this time, just to encourage others with?
So the one that came to mind for me a lot was just, you know, feeling very stripped down in situations like this. You feel like all my weaknesses are just being magnified. You know, in our situation, you feel like your patience is just gone. Like, you know, you're with your kids all the time, you know, and your kids are perfect. So I know you don't have any.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I can definitely relate to, you know, where Paul talks about how God's strength is perfected in weakness. And there is an abundance of weakness in life every day right now. But that also means that there is an abundance of God's strength that he can give to us when we ask and when we rely on him. So I think it brings about just a greater realization that we cannot rely on ourselves through this time, because we will fail by 10 o'clock in the morning. I've had it, you know, or whatever it is. And just to remember to just think those words and pray those words. God, you know, your grace is sufficient, and, you know, your strength is made perfect in my weakness. So bring on the strength, because we have a lot of weakness.
Amen. What about you? What about you, Becca?
Okay.
Sorry. I was gonna, yeah.
So I have, so on my bulletin board in my room, I just have a little snippet of a verse, but it's Philippians 4, I think it's like 4 through 9 that I have written down. But in it, I just have, the Lord is at hand. And, you know, the passage just starts, you know, rejoice in the Lord always. And then after it, it's, you know, be anxious for nothing, make your request known to the Lord. And I need the reminder all the time, you know, even when, especially right now, when Steph said, you know, we do feel isolated and we're lacking that community. You know, the Lord is near. And I think now with this whole quarantine thing, it's going to deepen our dependence for the Lord. And everyone's impacted differently, but I just want to kind of remember to focus upward and not outward, not to be distracted by the circumstances, what's going on, but just knowing the Lord is near, and to get through this. And, the Lord is always working in our hearts. We want to get through this quarantine with purpose and be intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And remember that God has a purpose in everything that he allows, and that this is happening globally to the whole world. I think it's a really significant event in the spiritual life of the church and in each of us individually. And that God has a purpose for each of those, for the individual and for the world. And I don't want to miss it.
Yeah. I kind of break it down like, what's the purpose for me, and then our family, our community, our church, our country, and it just keeps branching out. And when you think of it that way, there is purpose in everything.
Absolutely. No, thank you guys so much for sharing. I think that's, I know personally it's been an encouragement just to hear from you guys, but just excited to share this with others, just to, again, I think people are looking for that sense of hope and connectedness during this time. And so to be able to hear from you, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to just share from your heart and how you're journeying through this together, and just keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus in the midst of it all. But I know I asked also if you guys would be willing to sing a song and share some of your gifts with the church digitally and virtually. So
we will do our best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. With heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are still, when striving cease, my comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save, till on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied, for every sin on him was laid, in the Christ I live. There in the ground his body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again, and as he stands in victory, since curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his, and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. No guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's prescribed to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate this.
You're welcome, Paul. It was really
Awesome.
good to talk to you.
Good to talk. Good to talk to you guys too. And look forward to staying connected and really appreciate you guys. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Oh, you too.
Bye.
All right.